Perfect. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Peeyush Srivastava, co-founder and CEO of Genetesis. Staying on the topic and trend of cardiac imaging, at Genetesis, we are the market leader in biomagnetic imaging solutions, starting with cardiovascular imaging as our flagship solution. So a little bit about the company. We're a 30-employee business based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. We've got a robust intellectual property portfolio, all in-house developed, designed, manufactured. Our IP estate includes software systems, AI and analysis, as well as mechanical design elements. So we are truly an end-to-end medical imaging solution. Our product, CardioFlux, is 510(k) cleared. We are an MDSAP compliant organization as well. Our product is also breakthrough device designated, and we have raised $25 million since 2016 to bring CardioFlux to market. And with that said, let me first describe what makes our team of 30 so passionate to do what we do every day. From an unmet clinical needs standpoint, our passion is to solve the challenge of heart disease evaluation, both in the acute care setting in the emergency room and in outpatient evaluation of patients with chronic risk factors. So in the acute care setting in the emergency department, patients presenting with chest pain, or in an outpatient setting with patients with considerable risk factors for heart disease, the underlying problem remains consistent. That is, today's technologies and standard of care to evaluate heart disease result in delayed care, often delayed treatment, at often disastrous consequences. Not only is there a huge cost and economic burden here, but lives are lost in the emergency room on a regular basis as a function of delayed care or delayed disposition, either to the cath lab or an inappropriate disposition that results in a discharge and a life lost as a result of that. We saw this problem firsthand and saw this as a key opportunity to develop new technologies to solve a very important and pressing need. So in terms of why the process is so inefficient, one of the most important things to note is that from a standard of care testing perspective, there's a little bit of a trade-off that's experienced at the ER physician and cardiologist level. That is, the simplest, easiest to use, most cost-effective tests like the 12-lead ECG are extremely insensitive, very low negative predictive values, so a test being negative certainly does not imply the absence of disease. And on the other side of the equation, the most sensitive tests, the primo testing like nuclear stress testing, which involves the injection of radioisotopes to detect ischemia in the myocardial tissue. It takes a lot of time in order to access. The availability of those tests is very limited relative to the number of patients coming into the door. So long story short, really the ultimate solution combines the best values from both extremes, the simplicity and ease to use that the 12-lead ECG offers, but with the resolution, sensitivity, negative predictive value of a nuclear stress test. And to bring those technologies together and those benefits together would certainly create an opportunity both in the ER and the outpatient evaluation of cardiovascular disease to bring down costs, to turn 18, 25, 30-hour length of stays in the ER into 2 or 3-hour length of stays, to get patients to the cath lab faster, to treat non-ST elevated MI and other patients who have underserved cardiovascular disease, and ultimately to solve a very broken healthcare process that is ubiquitous, not just in the United States, but globally. And it turns out a technology that has the ability to solve this problem has existed since the 1960s. Magnetocardiography, MCG, emerged in the 60s out of labs in MIT. And as you can see here on the top right in these colored images, it has the ability to resolve cardiac vectors at a very high resolution, i.e. bringing the resolution of a nuclear stress test very early on in the ER triage process. The challenge was in the 60s, sensing, compute, cloud, these were not things that existed in any practical way for ER or even clinical use generally. And so we've developed CardioFlux, which is a bold confluence of artificial intelligence, optical non-cryogenic sensing, which does away from the past versions of this technology and brings to market a completely non-invasive, rapid, and efficacious alternative to stress testing, both for acute care and for outpatient cardiovascular care. So this is a first-of-its-kind technology. It perfects the science from the 1960s into a breakthrough diagnostic imaging solution that takes 90 seconds to complete a scan, can be performed without any pharmaceuticals, contrast, or radioactive dyes. It was performed at rest and is performed by an EKG technician as opposed to a specialized rad tech or even a physician on-prem. In terms of IP estate, I mentioned earlier that we've got broad coverage spanning software systems, artificial intelligence, and the embodiment of the mechanical design in our next-gen sensing modalities. So the broad coverage includes the end-to-end processes that we utilize in order to make this technology available across the country. And in doing so, we've constructed what we know to be the most patient-centric and cost-effective diagnostic modality to evaluate heart disease, both in the ER and in the outpatient markets. And we're just getting started in terms of our cardiac applications. We have launched our CardioFlux application for ER use. There are adjacent applications that we will launch in the coming years, both including additional cardiovascular applications such as fetal heart rhythm monitoring, which is an underserved area, but also adjacent areas like neurology and oncology, where we've already signed partnerships to expand our applications. In terms of clinical evidence, we've demonstrated in 3 trials now spanning over 300 patients the utility of CardioFlux relative to standard of care stress testing. And time again, we've demonstrated that CardioFlux has the ability to improve diagnostic accuracy, but at a fraction of the cost, time, and resource utilization to achieve a diagnosis of acute coronary syndrome or a safe discharge home. In terms of the team that's getting us there, I've been working with this team for a number of years. We started the company in 2013. John Emanuel is our chief financial officer, is a corporate development M&A expert. Robert Takla is a CardioFlux super user, has been using the product over at Ascension St. John since 2017, albeit in a much less attractive embodiment back then. And then Robert Sokolowski, our chief strategy officer, has launched a number of products at iCardiac, at Medela, and at CardioMag Imaging, which actually developed the first magnetocardiography systems for commercial use back in the early 2000s. From a scientific advisory board perspective, we've comprised a group of leading ER physicians, radiologists, and cardiologists to support our journey. And a lot of their sites are actually represented in our early users as well. So on the bottom here, you see some of our most promising users. High-volume users include Ascension, Cleveland Clinic, Beaumont. We are actually not raising right now, which is a nice place to be right now. But if your name is not on the list, either as a user or as an investor/partner, we'd certainly love to talk and see your name on the slide here next year. But for now, I appreciate everyone listening into the presentation.